So to get this block here, we've got some more Drunkard's Path blocks, which is perfect. And you're going to have them face opposite of one another. So these two are faced this way. This is going to make your half moon shape. And then we're going to put a stem in the center. We are going to do these two first and then these two. And then come back and sew it to the center after we've done a little trimming. Now, after you've sewn these together, you are going to take off the inside according to the instructions. So I'm going to cut those off. Now that we have trimmed off the inside, we can now put this on, and we're going to sew it to one side first and then the other side. Now we have sewn that all together, and that block looks really good. So those are going to be our leaves and stem block. I've got one more to do, and then we'll move on to the flower head. For my flowers, I chose to do something a little different. I decided to make all of my centers just the same color because I was trying to stay within the Motely line, and this is just kind of what happened. So the way this comes together is we're going to take a middle piece, a front piece, and a background piece. Both colorways will be the exact same. And we're going to do these like we do everything else. I'm going to fold this in half and give it a finger press. And then I will fold this piece in half and give it a finger press. And then we're going to match up the center with a pin. Circles are weird. They're sewn together this way. It looks strange, but geometry is real and the math works. So I'm going to grab that and put a pin right in the center. Then I'm going to do some glue over here and make this hit. And then same thing over here. And then we're just going to sew it. It's going to be fine. So the more difficult part is definitely going to be the tighter curve, but you see that we just did that. That was easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So now we're going to fold this in half and line it up, right sides together. I know curves look so weird, but the geometry, the math is real. It works itself out. So you're just gonna stick your pin in there, and I'm going to move over here with this glue. And you can do this with just pins, or you can do it without pinning. There's so many curve quiltresses that just don't even need to pin, but I'm going to need to do this. I need to do it this way. It's an extra step, but I'm also not scared of curves because of this. And I feel good about knocking them out. So there's that. And again, like I said, this one is going to be a little easier because it's more like sewing a straight line. And you just pinch it closed. walk my way to the center, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll sew just like we did before. All right, now I've got my press down, and now let's go to the sewing machine and sew. So now that we have our curves sewn, I'm just going to come in and clip a little bit here. I am not clipping through the seam, but I'm clipping to the seam, just giving it a little bit of air to breathe. I'm going to do that on the smaller one, and also on the big one, just for funsies. We'll just give it a couple of snips here. And then I'm going to press them all going this way. So we could do it this way. We could do it backward if we'd like. Just lay them all back and press these. Make sure they're pressed out good. Make sure I got everything pressed out. Okay. After you have it pressed out, you are going to trim it down to the size that is specified. I like these creative grid rulers because they have the 1/4 inch there, and you want to put your 1/4 inch marking right here and right here on the curve, and then you go ahead and take your first cut. There we go. Because we are squaring it up, it might look a little wonky. Don't worry. That can go with the other beautiful blocks. And we just keep going. We're working on the Apparotly It's a Party. And we have gone and we've done our fabric pull from Sewing Art Center, and we decided to work with Motely for this. And I think our background is Fabelism or Figo, I forget. But if you want to see it, go on ahead and hop on over to the actual fabric pull. For color 1 and 2, I've cut out all the pieces. And really, this is all about curves. It's a drunkard's path, but because the curves in the bird section are so big, it should be a really easy sew. So I'm just going to grab the pieces and remember what color is what. And we've got all of these pieces and all these pieces. And I've got clips on here with some post-it notes telling me what is what. Now, if you want to get super duper creative, you go on ahead and mix and match these colors even more. But I've just kind of stuck to having the amount of birds in the colorways that they have, and I was able to follow the instructions on how much fabric to buy and that kind of thing just based off of the original pattern. All right, I'm going to lay these out because as you can see, some of the birds have this color, some of them, the main color is that color, and they have a nice chart that tells you what to do. So I'm going to lay them out according to that chart really quickly. Now that I have them all laid out, and make sure that you are marking and being clear about what color is what when you're switching around the colors. If you're not doing the colors that are on the pattern, you just want to be sure, because I got a little confused and turned around about which color especially since I'm actually using a rust and the rust is not in that rust position. So just be sure to mark. I have them all laid out according to that chart, and I'm just going to start sewing them together. I'm going to show you on this one how I do all of my drunkard's paths, all of them. Every single one of them will be done the exact same way. I fold them in half. The curve is right here on this side. And I just give it a little press here so that I can see where center is. I grab one of these and I do the same thing on the curved side. I fold it in half and then I press an indentation in there. Now I can see center here and I can see center here. We'll match those two together and I stick a pin in it. This is how I do all of my circles. Now I'm going to grab my glue pen, making sure that I have yellow glue in there. Yellow glue is fabric to fabric. It works wonderfully. And then along this, I just give it a little dash mark here. You can drag it all the way. You just want to be generous with it. And I'm trying to stay in the 1/4 inch margin. And then I grab it and I press this piece. I line them up and I press it right into the edge there, lining it up. And I just give it a little press, and it will hold. It will hold really well. You can do this with school glue too. And then I just walk it toward the center, pinching it. Lining up those edges, just pinching, making sure that it sticks. And it will fall into place again. The geometry of it all, the math just works out. So going ahead and do that, and then we're going to do it on the other side. I have this non-stick mat down just to make sure that I'm not getting any excess glue all over my cutting mat. And try to stay in the margin. Now, a lot of times we sew with a scant 1/4 inch, but really when you're doing curves, I find it best to take a nice voluptuous 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to move this so that it is lined up and walk its way in, lining up those edges all the way to the center. And it will just smooth right out. They always say be careful not to stretch the fabric. However, it's on a bias. You know, it's gonna stretch to meet that curve. It's just what it's gonna happen. All right, now that it is all ready to go, I'm gonna take it to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch all the way around. Now I've just finished sewing that. It took me a whole 1 minute to sew it. Can I sew it as quickly as I can a straight seam? No, but is it that big of a deal? No. So now I am going to take this and gently, this is what that side is. Looks pretty good. It looks pretty consistent. Of course, I sew with the guard on, you know, to make it consistent. And now I'm going to press this back just a bit. Just making sure that it is all the way up against those seams. Trying to anyway. That looks pretty good. Looks like a curve to me. Then we're going to take it and size it down. For this pattern, there is a lot of sizing it down, which is fine. Now we have sewn together all of our larger Drunkard's Path blocks for our two beautiful birds, and I think this is going to be so interesting, such an interesting colorway. Now we're going to go on ahead and grab our color number 11. I think we're working on the beaks now, and we are just going to grab one of these and grab a background square, and we are going to draw a diagonal line from one side to the other with a marking utensil. I'm going to use a friction pen because I don't think this is going to be seen. You can use whatever you feel comfortable with. And I'm just drawing from one side to the next. And I'm going to do that on all of my color 11s. All right, we've drawn all the lines on the diagonal. Then I grabbed a background square, and I'm going to sew on this side and on this side 1/4 inch away from that center line. Now that we have sewn on both sides of that line, I'm going to grab this ruler and slice down the center and cut these two apart. Now we have two half square triangles, and the instructions tell us to press toward the yellow. So I shouldn't say towards the yellow, it's pressed towards the colored triangle. So we're going to do that here. And you will have one leftover rainy day half square triangle. So you can go on ahead and just put that to the side. Now these half square triangles have to be trimmed down to the specified size. I'm going to use my block lock, which I love. I really love my block lock. I've tried a lot of different trimming techniques, but this one seems to be my favorite. It's the one that I end up going back to time and time again. And once you get all these trimmed down, put them to the side. So this is a slightly different color. We again are working on the beaks. And so we've got these little squares here, and we are going to mark them on the half too. So we're going to draw a line. If you have your seam tape, you might not need to do this depending upon how it's all set up. So we're going to draw a line down the center, and then we are going to grab a square, and we're going to put it in this upper left-hand corner here, and then we are going to sew from one side to the next on that line. We're sewing from one side to the next on that line. So we have this little guy who was sewn to the corner like this on the line. I'm going to grab one of my favorite rulers for this, which is the Creative Grids, which has this little 1/4 inch indicator line there. And I'm going to put that line right on that, and we're going to cut away. This is going to be a flip and stitch technique. And then they ask that you press toward this color. So this color is going to be up, and we're going to press. And there we have the piece that we need. cool thing about this is we're going to need to use it this direction for some, and we're going to need to use it this direction for some. So I'm going to make them all look like that. And again, there's no need to switch up the way that you're sewing it or anything, because they can be used either way. So now it's time to sew these together. They're calling these the left facing. I don't exactly know how all this is going to work out, but these are called the left facing ones, and there are 5 of these. And the way that this is done is the right facing. So just be careful where these are placed. But all these need to be sewn like this. And I want to say they get pressed toward this unit. Everything gets pressed toward that unit. It's time to build the eye units. And I've decided to go with white eyes for the blackbirds. I kind of tossed around the idea of doing yellow and whatnot. And then I'm doing pitch black instead of using that black fabric, just because I wasn't sure where the white parts were going to end up. And it might have made the birds look cockeyed or something like that, or not dreamy enough. So I've decided to go with straight white and straight black. Let's build these units. So to build these units, we've got these little squares here. So we're going to sew all the squares together. Then sew this unit to get to it, and then this bottom unit to it, and then we'll have 1 unit. Apparently these are for 2 of the brown birds. So we are going to press this to the center. We're kind of getting into tiny piecing for me. When you start getting these little itty bitty pieces, I'm just like, whoa. They're tiny, but make sure that you press toward that black. A lot of the time I will do something like make all of these units or make all of the other units and then start assembling them. But for this, I'm just kind of going to go as I need to. So this unit here, and we just need 1 of these. All 3 of these are going to be, this bird is a lot bigger than I thought it was. When you see it on the thing, as I just put it together, I'm like, this bird's kind of big. It's a big bird. So this is going to be the first unit. It does a great job of showing you how many to do of what. So this is just going to be 1. So I only need 1 of this set here. And it's I see what they meant now with the left facing. This one faces left. I'm going to go on ahead and sew all these together. And then I'll do the other eye unit and sew those all together and just kind of be pulling from the one with the background on it. I'm just going to work those. I'm just going to work with them instead of doing assembly line, like finishing all the eye units. I just don't feel like it. So I'm going to do this and see this bird. He's big. He's so much bigger than I thought. All right, let's do it. And another tip, if you did not use the colorway that she suggested, be sure to mark what color is what. So for this one here, it's this is the brown bird, and I had to mark, it's actually the gold. So I'm glad that I wrote it down, and I'm paying attention again to how many of this bird I need. Now that all these heads are done, this is getting very interesting palette. I can't wait to see what it looks like when it has a little bit of pops of the purple in there with it. So now we've got to do these bodies, and again, the chart looks good. I have no idea how this is going to go exactly, but I'm gonna give it a try. I'm looking at it, and again, just because I've mixed these colors today, I'm struggling. I don't know why. I'm struggling with, even though I've got it labeled, whatever. Give me a second and I'm gonna do these bodies really quickly. So this is going to be our first body. We've got 2 here and 2 here, and then 2 pieces here. We'll sew these together and then add this, and then we'll do the same thing 2 times, and then this baby will be, the body will be done. Now that all our bodies have been done, all of these bodies need a background strip So we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna press it toward the background strip. All of these need a background strip. So now I have the bodies, and these are two different facing bodies. And we have a background strip sewn to the side of it. Now we've just got to figure out what head, and I'm pretty sure the head color is determined by this strip right here. And this one looks like it should go like that. And this one feels like it should go like this. Oh, look at our birds. They are coming together. All right, grab your bodies and these heads and sew them together, and let's get cracking. So I'm working on the bird, and I keep rotating and trying to figure out what went wrong here. And there are about 3 or 4 things that went wrong here on this particular block. So like I told you guys, please be careful and really check out those charts and be diligent. Otherwise, you might have to rip. Now, this is the only guy I have to rip, thank God, but I do have to do quite a bit of ripping because this one here, this block has to rotate. And this needs to go on that side, so it's got to completely come apart, which sucks because look how good that looks right there. No worries. We are going to, I'm going to spray this actually with starch, and then I'm going to rip it. This is a super soft fabric, and I don't want a lot of it to come apart and start unraveling and things. So I'm going to hit it with some starch, press it, then I'm going to seam rip it and then put it back together. All right, again, I am concerned. So I fixed my bird, and it didn't take long to take all that apart and put it back together and sew it. I mean, it did not take long at all. So now I've got my right-facing birds, my left-facing birds in 2 piles, which is nice. I don't know that that's really going to be all that helpful, but it is what it is. Now we need to work on these birds' tails. We've got color 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you know what? Honestly, I don't know which color is what. Again, I'm so annoyed about the way that my lack of organization in this. And if you're doing this, do not fall victim to what I did, because it's just wasn't great. So I need to figure it out because it's going to matter right here. And if I screw this up, I might have a true problem. So I am getting ready to label what color is what again. I know that this is 1 and 2 and this is 3 and 4. I just don't know which one is which. I think this is 1, 2, whatever. I'm going to figure it out. And then I'm going to mark these properly. So these are all the tails. And they each need a flip and stitch on the end of them. But the flip and stitch goes in different directions according to what color we're doing. So let me break that down and I'll be back. Now we've gotten to the point where we need to check these. And when you do it, it's actually not that bad. It actually makes perfect sense. You know that you have, if you know the direction of your birds, you're like, okay, I got this. So you do 2, number 1, one direction, and then the other ones are going to be the other direction. So I'm just going to put these to the side. We're going to grab our little squares here. We're going to mark a diagonal angle on all of them. I'm going to use my friction pen again. You know what? We've got some new friction. We've got some new pins that we should try. No, we'll do that on another video. We'll do it on another video. Let's just stick to what we know today. Let's grab a friction pin. And I'm going to draw a diagonal line tip to tip. Then, according to the directions, you need to figure out which direction this needs to lay on this. Are you going this way or are you going that way? And they're going to be different according to how many you do of one color, how many you do. So pay attention to the direction of that line. It is going to be important. So you might be sewing it that way or you might be sewing it this way. it will matter. So we have just sewn these little tabs on the back for the tails at different angles. You see these are going this way, this is going this way. Again, please, please, please put them to the side. Make sure it all makes sense. Do what you can, because of course the very first one that I sewed, after telling you everything I told you, was wrong. So just try to be careful, because with this one here, you're gonna cut away, and once you cut this away, you're all in. So I'm going to cut with courage, and for the ones that are going this direction, I'm going to cut away here, and then we are going to press it back that way. Okay, so that's all the ones that are that way, and then for the ones that are this way, I'm going to cut away like this. And I've got that 1/4 inch line right there on that line. We sewed right down the center on this one. And we'll cut that away. And we'll press it back. And these two should be opposites. They are. They're opposite. So cut away all your excess, press them back, and let's start assembling rows. Because this is a good size throw, I don't have room to lay it out the way I usually do with my little 3-yard quilt. So just know and pay attention to which size background piece. Some of them are very similar in size, and which direction your birds are going and all of that. I am so excited to put this purple pop of color in with this. It just gives it, it's just the color pop that it needs. This is a really interesting quilt. So this first row isn't interesting because there's no tails, but it starts to get interesting when the tails get added. So I'm going to go on ahead and do this first row and then come back for the tails. So I've got row 1 done, and I'm going to assemble row 2 a little different. The first of row 2 is actually a bird, and I'm going to keep that to add to the row last. I'm just going to work on the meat and potatoes of this one, which is going to be a couple of tails and these tiny strips first. I'm going to do some tiny strips and some tails, and then I will add the rest of the pieces to that. The meat and potatoes of this row 2 is going to be this part right here, and these are the 2 birds' tails. And just to be sure that I'm doing it right, I just grabbed that first row just to make sure that this makes sense. So yes, that's going to all match up there. So I'm going to put that aside and just do some strip piecing with this, and then add the rest of them on. And then we're going to be pinning like the dickens to make sure that these tails end up right. So we have our birds, and I've pressed all of the seams open that are joining these birds and everything together. So they're all open seams. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I forgot to do that before I turned on this video, but this is what we're looking like. And boy, is this cool. This is very, very cool. But I'm going to do some serious pinning in some of these areas. Again, this hasn't been pressed just yet, but we're going to do some serious pinning right here and right here. I want those tails to hit where they are supposed to hit. This background fabric is extremely stretchy. I mean, it's just giving. I mean, I know I'm working with a lot of bias, but even these straight strips are just soft. It's a soft fabric, and I'm not super starching it, and I don't know how I feel about it. It's letting me do a lot of manipulation, but I tell you, it is soft. So I'm going to press this guy, and then I'm going to pin this row to this row and do the next 2 rows, and then you guys will see a completed parrot party. Actually, after I do the innards, then there's some borders that go on the tops and the outside, of course, because it seems like there's always a border somewhere. But then I'll do the borders, and then this will be a party. For rows 2, 3, and 4, I really like working with this unit first. It's a lot of the piecing, and I think it goes a little better than just starting with the first block and then sewing this to that. I just think this works better. I am going to piece this whole section together. Then I'm going to add the flower blocks in between to this arty piece section. This quilt is coming out gorgeous. It's so interesting. So interesting, even with these black ghost birds. I think I might change if I were doing it again, I might change the eye color on the blackbirds, but maybe not, because they give a very eerie ghost, Beetlejuice, Tim Burton kind of feel. I like it so much. These flower, like the pops of color with the flower, you guys, this is just delicious. So I'm going to finish it up, sew this last thing on, and then I will do the borders, and then you guys will see this guy all finished. So we have a finished quilt. Let's see what Janine over at Queenie Quilts has done. Oh my goodness, I think this is absolutely stellar. Check this out. These are the same parrots that we used on the other quilt. It's just got a wonderful, lovely, large scale to it. I'm going to go on ahead and throw this binding on, which is going to be this right here. And then we will be done.